Do you pee when you jump or when you cough? Or are you thinking about having a baby, or did you have a baby 40 years ago? Whatever the case, you should see a pelvic floor specialist, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm Juli Bauer Roth, the food, fitness, and lifestyle blogger behind PaleOMG. Welcome to my channel. I'm here to share my favorite food, workout, and wellness tips to help you live your best damn life. Today, we're going to be talking about the pelvic floor. Do you even know what your pelvic floor is? I mean, I thought I did, but I had no idea that so many pieces were part of the pelvic floor. So when I thought of the pelvic floor, I often thought about people at my CrossFit gym who did double unders and would pee when they would do double unders. And it was thought of as kind of normal. Like, I remember going to this CrossFit gym and I would train with the trainers at the gym. So they were competing on a regular basis. And the woman was doing double unders, peed herself, was jumping in the pee as she did the double unders. It's going down into her shoe, and then was just kind of laughing about it. It's like, wait, you know, you don't have to live life like that, right? You know, that's not actually normal. We shouldn't normalize it. Or have you had a baby and now you pee yourself? That's not normal either. We've normalized these things that do not need to be normalized, and we should know how to work on these things. Now, think about an injury. So say you broke your toe. No, let's do a bigger one. Let's say you broke your leg. We'll go even bigger. If you broke your leg, you get a cast on it to get the bone to heal. And then afterwards, would you just simply take the cast off and start running? No, you're going to start doing rehab. You're going to do physical therapy. Now, pelvic floor physical therapists are doing therapy on your pelvic floor. So there are all kinds of different reasons why you would see a pelvic PT. Painful sex, urinary incontinence, urinary urgency. Say you got to go and you can't hold it. Bowel incontinence, constipation, pelvic pain, lower back pain, diastasis recti. So many things. There are even more than that, but those are just some of them. And this isn't just women. This is men too. I actually know multiple pelvic floor PTs who see more men than they see women, which is pretty crazy. So if you're dealing with erectile dysfunction, you might want to see a pelvic floor PT to get even more info about that instead of simply just turning to the drugs. Pelvic floor specialists are cool. So now that we talked why you would see one, let's talk about what pelvic floor physical therapists do. So pelvic floor PT is going to help restore a higher level of function, mobility, and movement. And this is going to all stem from the pelvic floor. They'll be able to figure out where some of these issues are coming from and be able to trigger point those specific areas to help with that function, mobility, and movement. Now, what's going to cause pelvic floor dysfunction? There is a ton of different things that can cause issues in the pelvic floor. Long before you've even had a baby, if you're a man, have never had a baby, there's all kinds of reasons. So strain on the muscles when giving birth, vaginal childbirth, obesity can actually cause pelvic floor issues, traumatic injuries to the pelvic floor, maybe you got in a car accident, a pelvic floor surgery, nerve damage. Something as simple as constantly coughing can actually cause issues to the pelvic floor. When you cough, you're engaging that pelvic floor. Chronic constipation, so you're pushing those hemorrhoids, they'll get you. Weightlifting, high impact exercise, overuse of pelvic floor muscles, and even just aging and menopause. All these things can play into issues with your pelvic floor. Now, what to expect when you meet with a pelvic floor physical therapist. So first, they're going to ask you in-depth questions about your medical history and current issues that you're experiencing. You'll go into evaluation of all of your different symptoms, and then a physical examination will occur. Oftentimes, there will be an internal examination as well. The internal examination is going to help determine your pelvic floor tightness, how you relax your pelvic floor, any scar tissue that might be within the pelvic floor, tight muscles, and more. And just like every physical therapist has their ways of doing things, every pelvic floor specialist PT is going to have a certain way of dealing with the issues at hand. So they're going to have different modalities. And some of these could include dry needling, cupping, scar tissue release, trigger point release, and different pelvic floor exercises that you can do with them and you can do on your own. So a little bit about my own experience with pelvic floor physical therapists. I had heard all about them as I got pregnant. People talked about them and said you should go see a pelvic floor specialist. And I thought, okay, I definitely want to see one, but kind of put it on the back burner. And then probably halfway through my pregnancy, I started experiencing pubic pain and really, really bad sciatica. The sciatica was crippling. I could barely stand. Exercise was so hard. It was even painful laying down. So I found a pelvic floor PT, contacted her, and got in about halfway through my pregnancy. So at my first pelvic floor PT appointment, it was really nice because she was just an amazing PT, but she made me feel incredibly comfortable. And an internal exam is never comfortable, but she is very gentle. That's what is the difference, I feel like, between me having to go to the ER for a recent random thing that popped up and having to have a pelvic floor exam versus a person who specializes in it. They have different techniques with getting things up there. She made me feel very comfortable and at ease. So immediately she wanted to learn how I engaged and how I relaxed my pelvic floor. And something she found with me, and oftentimes with people who exercise on a regular basis, who lift on a regular basis, they're very good at engaging their pelvic floor for pulling things in, but they're not as good when it comes to relaxing. So she really taught me how to relax my pelvic floor. She would have finger, maybe two in there, and have me engage. So think about doing a Kegel and then relaxing and letting that go. And oftentimes I wasn't properly letting it go. So she would work with me until I was able to let things relax, fully relax. Next, since I was halfway through my pregnancy, she really went through the movements to see which ones would be safe for me to do and not cause any extra strain on the belly. So if you see a pregnant woman doing a certain movement, sometimes you'll see some coning develop right in the middle where your abs kind of come in. They actually flare out, and this can cause diastasis recti, which is completely common during pregnancy and happens to most people during pregnancy. But the whole point is to make sure we don't make it worse. And you can make it worse by exercise, but more importantly, all the things you do on a daily basis, like getting in and out of bed or getting off the couch. When you're pregnant, you're putting a lot of pressure down on that belly that you didn't in the first place. And you have to learn how to breathe correctly so you don't put that added pressure on the belly. She taught me how to do that. And then she looked through different movements I was doing in the gym to ensure I was engaging properly and then releasing properly and not causing any extra pressure to the abdominal wall. And then on top of it, she worked on my pubic pain, talking about different stretches I could do. And then she worked on my sciatica with dry needling, with cupping, gave me some relief, but honestly, the only thing that gave me release from sciatica was giving birth. So she tried her best, but my little Avery girl was just in that right position that during birth, I had to stand up for a second. I almost fell over. The sciatica was so bad, but it went away as soon as I gave birth, literally the second I gave birth, it was gone. So I saw my pelvic PT 5 times while I was pregnant, mostly to work on the sciatica and then just make sure everything was working properly. I wasn't getting too much separating in the core. And then we did different things that started to prep for birth. And so it included stretching of the perineum, because you'll want to just prep that vaginal opening for when it has to stretch, hopefully causing less tearing as you get closer to your birth. She taught me stretches to help with birth and opening up the pelvic floor. We chatted about things that I wanted. So I wanted an unmedicated birth. So we talked about different birthing positions, hypnobirthing. She was really almost like a doula act. She was really helping me walk and talk through what my goals were with birth. And then at my last visit, we talked about postpartum care, because the pelvic floor, especially if you have a vaginal birth, goes through a whole lot. Or even if you don't have a vaginal birth, but say you pushed for hours and then you had a C-section, if you were really putting strain on that pelvic floor, on that vagina, a lot of things can happen, and you want to make sure you're really going into the best postpartum care to help everything recover in the best way possible. So we talked about perineum care, what to avoid. getting a squatty potty, making sure you take some sort of stool softener or magnesium, activity after you give birth, what that activity should look like, how to prevent leakage, and what happens week to week as your body lays down new collagen fibers and the abdominals are beginning to strengthen. We talked through all of that, so I was really prepped for after birth. Then after I gave birth, I saw her 4 separate occasions. So my first appointment was 3 weeks after birth. Did not include any internal exam. It was simply to get together and talk about what I experienced in birth, how I was feeling, what wasn't feeling correct, and how to work on that. So she made sure she gave me some thoracic and pectoral stretches because a lot of those things can get aggravated because you're breastfeeding, so we're constantly pulled forward. We talked about hemorrhoids, God bless them, and then some very simple abdominal progressions that I could start doing really early on that were going to be very safe. Then after my 6-week postpartum checkup, everything was cleared. Okay, that means nothing. Go see a pelvic floor PT. They say you're clear to do whatever. Maybe talk to a person who specializes more in what's going on. Because at my 6-week postpartum checkup appointment, they did no internal exam and they just said, "Are you still bleeding? Okay, you're good to go." No. Pelvic floor PT is going to look way more into what's going on in your body. So we did an internal exam. She looked at the tissue because your body is laying down new collagen fibers. You may have some scar tissue going on. So we talked through all of that, different things to help work on that scar tissue since I had some tearing at birth. And then we worked on incontinence. I had actually experienced complete urine loss. I thought I was like, oh my God, I am going to pee myself for the rest of my life. That was pretty early on after birth, and things got continually better, and I don't have that issue anymore. But we talked through ways to work on that. I was feeling some heaviness after birth, so I was worried that some bigger issue was at hand, and she was able to assure me that wasn't the case. And then we talked about different exercises at home, whether they were abdominal, hip stretches, or whatever else, to make sure I was continually progressing forward. We even talked about icing. I was dealing with some issues back in my pubic bone just from birth, which is very common, and just icing. We talked about all those different things. And every time I would see her, she would send me a long email with everything we had talked about, with attachments so I could see different stretches. So I was reminded of everything we had talked about and what she recommended moving forward until our next visit. Then at 10 weeks postpartum, she said I was clear to have sex if I really felt like it. And this was very different from my 6-week checkup because this time she did an internal exam. She looked at that scar tissue. She did all kinds of different things to ensure that I was able to have sex comfortably. Not just do it, but actually comfortably. She looked through all of that. So it was really helpful to have that information with her. And then when I was 13 weeks postpartum, I saw her for the last time. And she said, you really don't need to see me unless something else pops up. But I was showing no diastasis recti at that point. When she would measure my separation, it was below what the diastasis recti number is. And so I wasn't dealing with that. In some spots, she couldn't even measure it. So my abdominals were really coming back together, and she wanted me to just continue to work on oblique work and then eccentric movements because I was still having a little bit of coning, a little added pressure when I was doing an eccentric move, like leaning back to do a sit-up. But since I was dealing with some rib flare just from having a baby in there, and those ribs flare out a little bit and take some time to come back down, she gave me different movements to work on that and different recommendations, like Maya abdominal massage, working on that as well. So different recommendations outside of her and outside of what I could do at home. As I record this, I am 16 weeks postpartum, and I'm pretty much doing everything in the gym that I had done before pregnancy. I'm not dealing with any diastasis recti. I'm not dealing with any urinary incontinence, any issues whatsoever. All of these issues that I was worried about or I had dealt with at the beginning of pregnancy have really cleared up, and I truly think that has to do with seeing my pelvic floor PT. Learning how to properly engage my pelvic floor and relax during working out not only helped me during my pregnancy, it helped me during birth, and then it has helped me postpartum. And so I know how to fully engage and fully relax. She's taught me so much with diaphragmatic breathing breathing and blowing as I go. And what that means is, as I'm picking up Avery, blowing out instead of pushing down, how we often do. We push down with our pelvic floor and we don't even think about it. I can't recommend seeing a pelvic floor PT enough. It has changed my life for the better, and it has absolutely helped me postpartum. But if you're not postpartum, or maybe you had a baby 40 years ago, but you don't have to be in early postpartum to see a pelvic floor PT. It's never too late. I had a woman who messaged me on Instagram a few weeks back and told me she was 45 years postpartum and she had just started to see a pelvic PT to work on the issues she was having, and it was awesome. And again, guys need to see pelvic floor PTs too. It's not just women. I can't recommend it enough. It's never too early. It's never too late. If you're dealing with issues, if you're dealing with pubic pain, if you're peeing as you're jumping rope or coughing, go see a pelvic floor PT. They will help you so much. And they're getting bigger and bigger. When I was a baby, my mom never heard about that. And now it is part of our world. And hopefully there's plenty near you that you can look into. But start doing some Googling, start talking to your friends if they have seen one. Word of mouth, I think, is always the best way to find one. And hopefully they can help you with your issues and clear those things up in no time flat. Some of the issues that I saw were literally cleared within weeks of doing the exercises she had me do at home. Can't recommend them enough. If you found this video helpful, give it a little like and don't forget to subscribe. I'll have many videos coming up in the future. If you want to check out my functional medicine experience, I have a link to that in my description as well. That is one of my favorite things. Not only seeing a pelvic floor PT, but a functional medicine doctor has helped me a ton postpartum to make sure I'm getting adequate vitamins and minerals to thrive in this new journey in life. So I hope this was helpful. Stay tuned. I have a few more videos I think you're going to like.